Hi, it's Mike with the Portage County Safety Council. I'm here with my friend Joshua Hill, who's a therapist. Welcome to the podcast, Joshua.
And thank you for having me.
So, Joshua, we're here to talk about stress. Before we do that, just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I am a therapist practicing in private practice in Howland, Ohio, working mainly with the adult population for mental health. Started seeing some teenagers, and then eventually, when I'm confident enough, going down and seeing children, but we'll get there.
So what are you seeing in your practice as far as stress goes? I like to joke it's the end of the world. We have killer hornets, riots in the streets, elections, and that's still going on, it looks like, and headed in just to Thanksgiving. COVID-19, I don't know what else is going to come. There's always a hurricane or two to hit, but there's a lot of different things to deal with. We're having to do life. Everyone's saying the new normal. I'm not particularly a fan of that. I like the hunker down approach until this thing's over, take cover.
Okay.
But what are you seeing out there with all this extra pressure coming from the outside and the clients that you work with? What are people dealing with? How are they processing it? What's going on in the therapy world?
Well, it definitely, the stress is increased significantly more than what I've seen in 2019. But because of COVID and, obviously the election, there's this stress with my clients that I'm noticing that they have to adapt the best that they can to this new normal. And we know that change, whether good or bad, is difficult to adjust to. But a lot of the clients coming in are like, how do I successfully adjust with all of this stuff? I have to teach my kid now. I have to basically learn the material that they're learning in school so I can help them. And then, especially in the work setting, there's been a lot of my clients who said, we've had staff that has been let go, who have quit. So, maybe an office that there was 20 employees, they're down to 5. So there's just this crazy amount of stress running rampant in society, and especially the clients that I see, and they're doing their best, they are. But it seems that, when they're able to kind of adjust, a new life event happens that they're just like, oh God, now what do I have to do to get through this?
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I talked before we started recording and even before on LinkedIn. There's a really big impact of stress on our chemical and nervous systems, isn't there?
Yes.
What does stress physically do those systems in our body?
Well, so stress is actually a pretty nasty beast on our bodies, right? So there's that good stress and there's that bad stress,
Sure.
Right? Good stress is, okay, I'm planning for a wedding. I got a promotion at my job, and I have to learn all this stuff. So of course that's going to be stressful as you're learning. But then, the bad stuff can be like maybe a loss of a loved one, loss of a job. So I've noticed that a lot of my clients and even people in my personal life really don't understand what stress does to our body and what is going on when we're in this situation that is causing us stress. So what happens from a neurological and biological really aspect of stress is that, we're stressed out. So that activates the wonderful alarm system in our brain, or the amygdala.
Right.
Yeah, who then likes to signal the adrenal glands to release the wonderful stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And that gets pumping through our veins, right? So, we have these hormones pumping through us. Our body's ready for fight or flight, since that's the system that's activated. And then the corresponding nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system, tied directly to that fight or flight response. So we aren't meant to have continual stress in our life. Our body is just giving us a healthy dose of cortisol, adrenaline. Hey, let's get through this, and we'll eventually calm down. But what ends up happening, especially with chronic stress, and especially in 2020, is that system keeps on reactivating, and it's reactivating for longer periods of time. And we're just not built that way. That's why a lot of people who I see, I've been fatigued, I've had no energy, I feel like I'm more anxious, more depressed. And then when I really get to the root of, okay, when did this start? A lot of them are like, oh gosh, when the first shutdown happened. back in March.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so was there a period where you felt maybe a little bit more calm? They're like, no. So, my clients' body, their nervous system is just continually going, and that's gonna tank our health.
Yeah. And it's crazy, when that adrenaline kicks off, right?
Mhm,
It's made, like you said, part of that fight or flight mechanism.
mhm.
But, back in the day, we ran from wolves or chased wolves, and it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But now, thanks to our mirrored neurons and some other things out there,
Mhm.
literally that thing gets triggered all the time, and now we sit in front, I heard a guy say one time, we sit in front of a TV eating a bowl of popcorn and we're
Mhm.
watching a scary movie or a war movie or something like Braveheart or something, out there, or Mandalorian, and you're like, oh, and your
Yeah.
body don't know the difference, and it starts releasing adrenaline. And you got to think with our technology, our smartphones,
Mhm.
everywhere we look, there's I joke, and it's kind of crude for a professional podcast, but I remember going to a restaurant to get some wings, and there was an LED screen
Mhm.
right above the urinal. And I'm like, can I not
Oh,
get like a foot of free space where I don't have to be like sold something?
right.
You know what I mean? I'm like, come on, guys. Like, come on,
Right.
this is ridiculous. So, in every aisleway at Walmart or these stores you see, there's certain things. And literally, I remember like this became more real to me. And I'm a, self-diagnosed coffee addict probably. And I remember going to McDonald's. I was in a hurry and I run in there, and my favorite thing at McDonald's is coffee. I'm not a big fan of anything else, but I ran in there one time and they had this LED screen hanging up, and it was like this river of chocolate with coffee beans. And all of
Oh
a
my
sudden, like a hearkening angel, there was a McCafe cup covered in white light, glowing like, oh, and I found myself salivating like Pavlov's dog. And I started saying, I'm like Pavlov's dog. I think I got a problem here. And I realized everywhere I go, I'm getting stimulated, even the most subtle ways, and all that stuff. Throughout history, we have never had that happen. And that's
Mhm.
pre-COVID, and
Yeah.
now you can't turn on your TV. Like, man, I just have to shut the media off. I can't,
Mhm.
and a lot of times that's probably the best way, shutting off social media for a while, and the media and different things. But all that just overstimulates us. And we had a chiropractor that came last January, actually,
Mhm.
and talked about stress and how to reboot your health and different things. And she showed the diagrams of the impact of your nervous system. When you get stressed, it literally like, uh, it's not her words. To me, it seemed like it just clenched up the nervous system,
Mhm.
and it prevented, she said, it literally prevents your body from going into rest and actually healing itself. And
Mhm.
so stress can prevent your body from healing itself. I think it's way bigger. It's so ambiguous, I think, and it's like this invisible enemy kind of thing, and we can't put our finger on it because we call everything stress. But
Right.
literally, it's that big of a deal. It can literally prevent us from healing ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, they say stress is a killer, and it really is. And, not to veer off topic too much, but just a little bit, that's why, people who have gone through serious trauma, I shouldn't say
Mhm.
serious, but any sort of trauma
Right.
where, maybe whether it's diagnosable PTSD or just that concept of, developmental trauma, which I'm hoping will one day be recognized. But anyway, I mean, that's why a lot of them have those health issues, is because their alarm system's just being triggered left and right, and they still think the brain still thinks they're in danger. And so they
Right.
come in and they're just like, well, I have this going on. I have chronic pain, because yeah, the nervous system just is not shutting off, and our body can't heal when that stuff, that cortisol, that adrenaline is just pumping through us.
So I had this old football injury. Actually, it wasn't a football injury. I always say that. I think it's a joke, but I was actually in a car accident. And I just want to give a physical example
Mhm.
to our listeners that maybe you could relate to in regards to stress. Uh, I was in the accident. There was a 2A stop. I was 14. My sister was driving, and anyone that's from Garrettsville knows where this is. It's State Route 305 and 88. There's a
Ah, yeah.
2A stop, and people always come to the Nelson Ledges Quarry Park
Uh-huh.
party weekend, and they came across the 2A stop thinking it was a 4-way stop, and we hit them, like T-boned them, and I didn't have my seatbelt on. I flew up, kind of hit my head, and knocked me out a little bit, kind of thing. Well,
Mhm.
I didn't even know that was traumatizing. Didn't even know anything happened. I was a little sore. Didn't think anything of it. Uh, fast forward a few, playing football, I
Mhm.
would get hit in the neck. And
Mm.
so the pain would get a little worse. Then here you go, no big deal. Just pop my neck a couple times, I'm good to go. Get in my 20s, my neck's hurting a little bit more.
Oh no.
Then I get in my 30s and I'm like, man, I can't do anything. It feels like I have stiff. And I go to the chiropractor, they take x-rays. He's like, you've been in an accident. And I was like, no, it's an old football injury.
Yeah.
and then I remember that accident, but was crazy about it was that first year, nothing. The first 10 years, nothing. But as it went on, when I started getting into, from 14 to my, late 20s, that 10, 15-year period started coming, it started becoming an issue. And then I'm like, I got to take care of this. And even though it was an injury that was so old, and it was almost like there's a compounding interest. I don't know what medical terms to use because I'm not in that field, but there's a compounding issue that it just kept getting worse. How much is that with stress on our mental health to where, maybe, I've been through childhood trauma, and there was a point where I realized my behavioral issues all stem from abuse that I went through as a child, not
Mhm.
realizing it because I was like, I'm a grown man. Don't know.
Yeah.
I do what I want to do. Not realizing I was actually in a pattern based off something that happened years ago until I was able to process that in a healthy way.
Mhm.
It just kept getting worse and worse. So how does stress affect that long term? Because a lot of people think, well, this is just COVID and this is that, but there could be a lot more going on, right? That COVID was just the icing on the cake, so to speak, to have this long-term effect to where maybe we could have managed it before, but now it's really taking a harder toll than we imagined.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's a great question. Um, yeah. No. So if there's like any pre-existing, excuse me, conditions, like, well, first of all, physical. Yeah. The stress
Mhm.
of today, whether it's because of everything that's going on, can definitely reactivate those old injuries in the body. But if we're talking about that trauma that you mentioned, I've noticed even with some of my clients that the stuff that they've experienced is being brought up more frequently because there's that stress response to what's going on in the world today. And a lot of them are like, I'm feeling the same way that I felt back then.
Yeah.
So it's the same feelings, it's the same behavior, it's the same thoughts. So a lot of them, yeah, 2020, it hit them, and it just activated that stress response. And they're thrown back to the terrible things that they've experienced, and they're noticing more increases of maybe flashbacks or intrusive images or thoughts. And it's really tanking a lot of people's ability to relax. And I've noticed too, even in therapy, the ones who have that developmental trauma, is that we're kind of putting out the fires of what's going on currently, because that's just at the forefront. But at the same time too, the old stuff is being triggered, and so they're
Yes.
being double whammied from both sides. And it's a lot of as um, in EMDR they say a lot of resourcing that I've gone back to, because it's just people's distress tolerance and emotional regulation skills kind of went down, because a lot of this stuff happened so suddenly.
Hmm.
And they're just like, oh gosh, I have to get rebalanced here. What do I do, Josh? And I'm like, okay, hang on. Let's go back to the basics here.
Yeah. Well, what are some of those basics? If I catch myself, I'm just getting overwhelmed through this, and maybe I had a little bit of stress before, and maybe I was in denial of it because I was functional and
Mhm.
did what I have to do, and there's no consequence of it to a degree. But now with COVID and everything, if I'm going through that, what's the first 2 or 3 things that you'd recommend that I start to do? Maybe some kind of self-care type, on a personal level and daily routine that we could do to kind of overcome that stress.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to first just even acknowledge that you're stressed.
Mm,
I've
yeah.
had a lot of clients be like, I'm fine, everything's good. And I'm like,
That's a big hurdle though.
it is. I
Mm,
mean, easier said than done.
yeah.
But we have to acknowledge actually what we're feeling, how the body's even reacting. Because I mean, that's the thing about stress; it manifests in our body, and it looks differently
Hmm.
for everyone. So it's really cultivating that mindful aspect of no, 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 wait, I need to actually validate myself, and this is what I'm feeling, and this is how it's affecting me. Because
Yeah.
then we're putting it on our radar to kind of look out for in the days or hours to come. So once we name it, validate it, acknowledge it, we can really look at what I like to do after that is activate the system that's going to help calm us. So, we talked about that sympathetic nervous system that really is kind of the gas pedal that gets us ramped up in conjunction with amygdala. So we want the other system to be activated, which is the parasympathetic. And that's, I like to call it, that's the brake. We want to apply the brake. We need that sympathetic nervous system to calm down. So
now, does that have to do with serotonin? Is that part of that system?
Oh, drawing on my memory banks. I think it is, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good. I'm just like, that's a good question, and a little caught off guard.
I watch enough TED Talks to get me in trouble to think I know what I'm talking about, but I really have no clue.
No,
so
you're good. It's the system that's activated when we're at rest. So at the end of a long day at work, we go home, maybe we veg out on the couch. That system is activating. Our breathing is a lot slower, a lot deeper, and we really aren't holding any tension in our body. Problem is with today's society, in the sense of what's going on, is that, like you said earlier, the media, right? It's just in our faces all the time. So people aren't able to de-escalate. So what I like to do is I tell people, okay, we need to get, the calming system active. And there's a very simple approach that I use that is very, it's commonly used within therapists who utilize EMDR therapy with clients. And it's just what's called bilateral movements. So all bilateral means is left and right motions across the body's medium. So we learn innately early on in life that, if I can do these slow bilateral movements, I can activate that calming system intentionally. And that
really?
Yep. Yeah. If you ever, I always use this analogy, or not analogy, but I always ask people, have you ever seen someone with an infant, holding in their arms? They're like, yeah. I'm like, what are they doing? Oh, well, they're rocking them back and forth slowly, right? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, and with anxious people, what do they kind of do? They're like, oh, they kind of rock back and forth, this way or kind of this way. So, we learn, whether we know it or not, that, slow left and right motions is something that we can utilize to calm ourselves down and help ourselves manage that. And as silly as it sounds, I always tell my clients, I'm like, you're going to leave today with a toy. And these are adult clients, but there's something that's just called a porcupine ball. It is literally just this.
Okay, I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will have them, especially the ones who come in, they're like, oh, I'm so stressed. I'm like, all right, hang on. Let me throw you a porcupine ball. It is as simple as just putting it in your palms and doing that. And a lot of people are like, is this really going to work? This seems.
That's what I'm thinking. Someone that comes off like that, what would you tell them?
What I do is just say, hey, just do it maybe for a minute with me as we continue talking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, I'll give it a go. And after about a minute or so, I check back in. I go, oh, hey, how are you feeling, by the way? What did you notice change for you? And they're like, I feel more calm and my body isn't as tense. And I'm like, good. And they're like, did that ball really just do what you said it was going to do? I'm like, well, yeah. And we're literally activating that wonderful calming system in your body. That's all we're doing.
So I want to ask a question about rest as well. Mm-hmm. Now, is there a bad kind of rest and a good kind of rest? Because I think in our culture, what we do is we call something resting, but maybe we're actually, like Netflix binging or video gaming to where the point it's becoming a problem. It becomes more escapism, or we could tend to get lazy, you know what I mean? That causes more stress in other areas down the road. What is healthy, good rest that's really going to recuperate us emotionally look like?
Honestly, what's really going to help recuperate us, and I know this is going to be like a cliche thing, but really having good sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Someone can be, oh yeah, I'm resting on the couch watching TV. And that's good. That, that's a good decompression thing, at the end of the day. But now we have to factor in the blue light, which we know keeps us going. Or even, on your phone, in bed, because that's what the brain likes to do. It goes, ooh, if we lay down in bed with the phone, well, we're not going to sleep. We're going to look through, I don't know, Facebook or Reddit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that stuff's okay to do, but it's good to do it smartly. And
I find I can't see, if I do that, it'll mess with my sleep a little bit.
Yep.
And I think I'm more of a visual person. And I remember my wife and I, her family's out of state, so we went down there and they had an old Nintendo set up.
Okay.
And
Nice.
so we played Super Mario 3 for
Mhm.
like 2 or 3 hours. Went on a little bench, cracked
Mhm.
down a little Super Mario 3. And all night long, I dreamed I had a turtle and I was jumping up with my hand and breaking bricks.
Oh my God, I love it.
And I would wake up in the middle of the night though, and I was like, I can't. The next day they're kidding around. What are we going to play in the? I'm not playing anything. I can't. I was up all night smashing bricks in my dreams,
Right.
and I know, you know what I mean. It was just my memory was so
Mhm.
stimulated from doing something different that it literally prevented me from getting that good rest.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's important. There's all this stimulation, and you said it earlier, from everywhere, and with all that stimulation going on, our brain, of course, is going to be aware of it and wants to zoom in, like, ooh, what's going on over here? What's going on over here?
Right.
And when we bring that into a place like the bedroom where we sleep, the brain's going to start linking, oh, when we lay down, but we're like, I don't know, watching TV or whatnot, is that it's going to start pairing that this room it's not just sleep, but we can look at things that are stimulating, and that can really mess up someone's sleep. So the sleep hygiene, having that routine of, okay, I need to start winding down. And there's things that people can do. I know a lot of my clients I encourage, especially if they have difficulty sleeping, because of stress or racing thoughts, is to, have a routine where you allow yourself to start winding down. And some of them will use the slow bilaterals. Others will like to do like meditation, because then we're, getting rid of that stimulation from our devices, and it's allowing our body to start shutting down. But also to separate, okay, I'm not going to look at my phone while I'm in the bedroom, because I really want my body to know when I lay down, I'm getting ready for bed, and the body's going to respond to that. And that's going to cause for, us to hit REM sleep more, which is what we need.
Our subconscious mind plays a huge role in this stuff, doesn't it? Like we literally program ourselves. And I know it's going to be a goofy example and people are going to laugh at me, but I'm just going to be one. I'll throw it out there. We just have a new season of Mandalorian. I'm not a big TV guy, but I'm really into Star Wars. And so I'm watching The Mandalorian, and the new episodes drop at 3:01 Eastern Standard Time. So I'm sitting there. There's no way I'm getting up at 3 in the morning to watch this. But I get excited about it, and I got caught up a couple times with the new season looking up these like spoiler videos on YouTube through my Fire Stick, right? So I'm watching this stuff before I sleep, and maybe I fall asleep like 11:30, 12, something like that. But every time I've done that, I've gotten up at 3:15, 3:30 in the morning, and I wake up like my eyes are like boom.
Right.
I'm wide awake, and I'm like, really? How'd I get up? And I just started laughing because I knew, like, I put so much into looking into this. My subconscious mind's like, hey, it's 3:30. It's kind of waking me up because no other day of the week do I do it. It's only on Fridays the last couple of weeks of this new season. Yeah. So that's a really big deal. You train your subconscious mind comes in there and you say, when I hit the bed, that's it. There's none of this distraction going on. There's none of this, and that's a big deal. So tell me, what are some tips you have to start phasing into that?
So I would suggest do it slowly, just because, when we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, and we know that when we're overwhelmed, we try something new, we're most likely not going to do it. So, if it's okay, I lay down in bed and, I usually scroll through Reddit at night. All right, well, instead of doing it in bed, maybe do it on the couch, right? And then an hour before you need to go to bed, maybe it's okay, Reddit's down, or social media or whatever it is. Maybe I'm just gonna engage maybe in some breath work or slow bilaterals or some meditation, something that's calming, that's not being stimulated by an external force, because that's gonna start the process of, all right, body shutting down. And then, when our body starts shutting down, we go, oh, I am pretty tired. So when you're tired, you can go into the bedroom without that device, whether it's phone or whatnot, is the brain's going to eventually learn, like, okay, we've done the social media thing. I've done some things to calm down. and now I'm here ready to go to bed. So when we lay down, that we'll be able to fall asleep faster, but also deeper.
Those are some good practical tips. I like it.
Yeah.
So I used to make fun of Tony Robbins all the time. Just, I don't know, just because I thought it was cheesy. And then I heard him say a good line. And actually, it was probably a meme. So, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to kind of eat crow a little bit here, I guess. But he had a line one time, and he said, just because the personality, I'd make fun of, but at least to myself. But there's a meme and it said, if you want to change your life, change the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
And how much truth is that from your experience working with clients one-on-one with this? We all go through some sort of trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously some people go through more severe trauma than others. I work with homeless vets through our agency, and I've had several through combat, and some it was like nothing happened, and some that couldn't, they would just sit there and cry, and it was just heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And going through the PTSD, everything that they went through. But it's so case by case, it's so different for every single person.
Mm-hmm.
How much of the way we process that and how we internalize it and interpret it and allow that to shape us, does that impact that buildup of stress over the long term?
I think it has a significant impact because it's really all about perception, right? With any sort of trauma, right? You and me could go through the same exact thing. Your perception might be like, okay, that was awful, but I'm okay. And I might be a hot mess going, oh my gosh, like I'm in danger. But that piece really starts going. And, the reason I really like EMDR as a therapy for my clients is because we're logical people, right? If we could if we could just kind of think things away, counselors wouldn't really be needed so much. But what we're really doing is dealing with the beliefs that are behind the perceptions. And people are like, oh yeah, beliefs are thoughts. And I'm like, well, no, actually beliefs are body sensations and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what beliefs are. That's what they're made of. And guess what? They're going to trump logic any day.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, when there's this belief that's still going, let's just say maybe I can't handle it is one, right?
Well, or I'm not worth it. I've seen people, I'm not worth to stick up for.
Yep.
And so they always let people walk all over them. Yeah.
Yep. And that's where I say, no, this belief is underlining, is creating the perception of what you experience things. So if anyone who's believes that I'm not worth it, well, guess what? Your thoughts are going to reflect that. They're going to go, well, why bother? Why stick up for myself? And then the behavior could be avoidance.
The behavior always follows the belief system.
Yes.
And that's where we get into head versus heart. I would put belief system with the heart kind of side of our cultural language. And so we have the intellect, so we know what to do. It's why people still smoke, even though they know it's bad for them. There's a response there, right? We know something, but then when we react, that kind of reveals our belief system. So in our minds, we could say, well, I don't really believe in that, or I don't really think that way. But then something happens to us and we respond or react out of a certain way. And you're like, whoa,
right?
Why did I do that? Where did that come from?
Yeah. And that's what when I'm actively reprocessing someone, and I've had a lot of experience with people who are just very intellectual and very rationalize a lot. So I've had to be a little bit more direct with them when I'm like, okay, what's the belief? They're like, well, I know this isn't true. So I'm really, no, I don't want your head. I want your heart. What's the belief? And they go, well, if I logically, I'm like, I don't want your head. I want your heart. What is the heart actually saying? They go, that I'm really not worth it, or I'm not good enough. I said, okay. Yeah. I said, your brain can do the pros and cons and evidence for, evidence against all day long. Yeah. But the fact is, you just don't believe it. And that's what we want you to believe it. So we got to get this gunk out first.
And it's hard for people to accept that if they believe it intellectually, but they still respond out of the heart, negatively to a certain situation or whatever. They're like, I know this, but I don't know why I'm still doing it. And they don't make the connection there a lot of times, right? It's like, I don't know if it's denial or just a blind spot kind of thing that takes through that phase of awareness,
I mean, I've seen the denial, but more times than not, it's really just, this is a big blind spot. that they're just not aware of until we're like, have you really thought maybe this could be the reason? And then a lot of them, it's like, the synapses finally touch and they're just like, oh my God, now I can see it. I'm like, okay, so let's do something about it.
Yeah, I went through, and I talk about this in some of the groups I do, so this isn't like a pity thing or to make this too heavy, but I went through some sex abuse as a kid. And as a young man, I went through a lot of relationships where I would self-sabotage those.
Mm-hmm.
When it started getting to the point where I would really fall in love or get too close for comfort, I would literally do something to kind of wreck it or cheat on the individual. And I did it to every single person I ever dated except my wife, thank God. So as I went through the process, but I went through an inner healing before that and really started dealing with I literally started reliving my trauma through dreams and daydreams. Actually, I'd be working and reliving some of the trauma of the sex abuse and things. Even though in my mind, I couldn't really remember much of it, but these glimpses would constantly, and I realized that was my body telling me to deal with this. And so as I began that process of going through it, I began to see my behavior change. And one of the things that, like I said earlier, I would have never connected my adult, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, aggressiveness, fighting, bar fight, whatever it would manifest, have any connection to something that happened to me age 5, 6, or 7. And it had everything to do with it because during that time, I developed a belief system that anytime I got close to someone, they're going to manipulate me. That's real common with that kind of abuse. They're going to reject me. So I had to deal with a lot of fear of failure, fear of rejection, and that fear of uncertainty that comes with all those things. But literally a lot of the behaviors that we try to fight, I've when I first started my job, I tried to tell people like, come on, man, don't do that. Like I try to coach the behavior, the surface level, and it never works. It never works. But when you start to dig in and you realize, some people that I worked with that had an unhealthy need to control the situation. And if they're at work, they're going to be like, this is a quality issue. And I'm not putting my name on it. I'm like, no. Why are you trying to control the room? And you get down to it and you discover what happened. They went through some kind of abuse and so their defense mechanism is, I need to be in control to be safe. And then that manifests and costs them jobs over and over again. And we have, managers and supervisors and HR managers going, you can't do that. And they're hitting the surface and it's not doing nothing. And so those that have the awareness of it, have worked with us in the past before they fire or terminate the employee, to allow them to go through therapy and anger management, different types of counseling to walk them through that. And there was a success rate, but the employer has to be patient. So what advice do you give employers? Someone's listening to this because our audience is typically employers. We're about 30% HR managers, 30% safety managers, about 15 to 20% CEO. And they're like, Mike, you're into this stuff about stress. This is personal, private. What does this have to do with our employees? And I'm here trumpeting everything because the fact that you're dealing with the people coming in late, not being on time, there's a lot more going on in that belief system, isn't there, than just that person's what they know it's right or wrong. And then just they struggle with it. There may be some opportunity to come and get them help before it becomes a bigger problem and you have to fire them down the road. What would you say about that?
So what I would say to employers is, to really start understanding what is going on with the employees, right? So if you're seeing someone who is constantly late or, let's just say maybe their mood isn't the best, instead of that reprimandation of their behaviors or their mood or whatever, is to really sit down and understand, okay, what is this person going through? Because most of the time, especially right now, is employees just want that support. They do. They want someone to see it, whether they know it or not, and say, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And I think right now we need that from employers, upper management, HR, because this is a crazy time. And especially, if someone has had something going on in the past, more likely, sorry, I'm tripping over my words here. More times than not, there we go, is that it's already triggering something that's a belief that's already present. So I really want to advocate for employers to, instead of getting upset, getting angry with the employee, is to have that one-on-one time and really saying, instead of saying, why are you doing this? Asking, hey, what's happening right now?
That's good.
What are you going through? Because they're going to respond. Some people might start breaking down and crying. That's okay. But it's really that, it's that connection, and that we're people who are social creatures. We crave that connection. And so when we feel like someone's being genuine and just asking, hey, what's happening right now? It look a little rough here. Can you tell me? They're going to feel, oh my God, this person cares. Especially as an employer, your employees are going to go, oh my God, my supervisor or whoever really cares about my health and, mental being. And it's when that understanding is fostered in, with the employer, between employer and employee, not only is that employee most likely going to feel supported and actually start addressing it, but they're going to feel validated in the sense of, okay, I am going through something, I can acknowledge it, I need to handle this. And, you're going to see better results from the employee at work. But
yeah. I'm a huge advocate for having an on-site social worker, counselor, therapist kind of person that could be a resource. And what a lot of companies do is they just contract with an employee assistance program company, which is fantastic. But the problem with that is if you're not working with a really good EAP, you're just going to hang some posters up, need help. And no one's going to respond to that because it's really about relationship, right? So if they have that with the supervisor, if they have a counselor that they see every day at the water cooler, then there becomes this small relationship where they begin to feel safe to come and start addressing those issues. Even if it's not a full-time person, maybe you contract someone out to come in like every Tuesday or something for a couple hours, but create something where they're seen, they're trusted, they're at the company picnics, they're on Zoom call, whatever it is, and it's a show of support and develop that relationship. I wish some bigger companies did that. I know some really big companies will have legal support on staff and all that. And it's the smaller companies like our members, it's pretty unlikely because usually they're 50 or less. Some of them are a little bit bigger, but may not be in the budget. But there's some kind of opportunity out there to really show support more than just hanging a poster on the wall and really engage your employees for health, especially at this time. It's just so crucial. And so Joshua, thank you so much. If anyone would like to get a hold of you for services or for more information, how can they get a hold of you?
So let me grab my card real quick, because I haven't memorized the number. So
that's another cell phone issue. I know one phone number now. So if my cell phone goes, I'm done. I can call my wife. That's it. That's
mine's my fiance. I'm like, all right, I know Kate's number, so anyone else, I'm doomed. So if anyone is interested in contacting me, they can reach me at 330-856-3975. And the private practice I work for is called Preferred Care Counseling. So we have 3 different offices. One's in Poland, one's here in Howland, the other one's in Columbiana. So we're kind of widespread to capture anyone in, the valley. But even if it's just for speaking or whatnot, or getting kind of like, hey, pick my brain, like, don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah. So if one of our member companies are, hey, I'd like to give my employees some information on this, maybe do a Zoom call with you. You be open for that?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So thanks again, Joshua. It was awesome. There's some really good information, we're going to put together an employer toolkit in the future. Maybe you can contribute some of that stuff. I really like what you had to say in the beginning about the chemical system and the nervous system. To me, it's just, I don't think we think about it in that way, that literally when people get hurt on the job, if they're under the stress, now I'm worried about getting fired or I got to deal with this medical issue, their bodies are less likely to heal themselves. And it's going to take the recovery time more and more. So employers, you guys have to start talking to your employees about stress. We did a survey of our members. Less than a third sometimes talk about stress. Most of them rarely or never talk about it. So only 1 out of 3 companies once in a while occasionally talk to employees about stress. So that's why we're doing this series, is to put some tools out there. Why is it we're making a case, to talk about stress? Why is it important? Why are we doing it? So Joshua, again, thank you very much. I'm going to get out of here, and everybody out there, stay safe and be safe. Take care.
Thank you.